Jake Morrison stepped off the transport ship and looked around the massive space station. The Aurora Dawn was bigger than anything he had ever seen. Metal walls stretched up high above his head, and bright lights made everything shine. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked through the corridors, talking in languages he could not understand. "Welcome to the Galactic Coalition training facility," said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see a tall woman in a blue uniform walking toward him. She had short brown hair and kind eyes. "I'm Lieutenant Amy Carter. I'll be your liaison officer during your stay here." Jake nodded and picked up his bag. "Nice to meet you." "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Jake Morrison from Earth's 3rd Infantry Division." Amy smiled. "Just Amy is fine. We're not on Earth anymore, and the rules here are different. Come on, let me show you around." They walked through the station's main corridor. Jake saw creatures he had only read about in briefing files. A group of reptilian beings with green scales and yellow eyes stood near a wall, hissing at each other in what sounded like an argument. Their arms were long and muscular, and Jake noticed sharp claws at the end of their fingers. "Those are the Vorthik," Amy explained. "They're known as some of the best fighters in the galaxy. The tall one with the red markings is Commander Crix. He runs this whole program." Further down the hall, Jake saw bug-like creatures with 4 arms and shiny black shells. They moved quickly and made clicking sounds when they talked. Their eyes were large and seemed to look in all directions at once. "Zephyrians," Amy said when she noticed Jake staring. "They're fast and have great reflexes. Don't let their size fool you. They can move faster than most species can even see." Near a large window, Jake spotted beings that looked like they were made of living crystal. They glowed with soft blue light and made musical sounds when they communicated. Their bodies were tall and thin, and they seemed to float rather than walk. "The Nexari," Amy continued. "They're peaceful by nature, but their crystal bodies are harder than most metals. They're here to learn defensive techniques." Jake listened carefully, but kept his expression neutral. He had been briefed about these species before leaving Earth, but seeing them in person was different. They all looked dangerous in their own ways. He wondered what they thought of humans. As if reading his mind, Amy said, "Most of them don't know much about humans yet. Earth just joined the Coalition 6 months ago. You're actually the first human to participate in the exchange program." They reached a large room filled with training equipment. Mats covered the floor, and various weapons hung on the walls. Aliens of different species practiced fighting techniques, their movements quick and powerful. Jake watched a Vorthik wrestler throw a Zephyrian across the room with one arm. "This is the main training area," Amy said. "You'll spend most of your time here. The program is designed to help different species learn from each other's fighting styles." Commander Crix walked over to them. He was even bigger up close, standing almost 7 feet tall. His green scales caught the light, and his yellow eyes studied Jake carefully. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rough. "So this is the human," Crix said. He did not sound impressed. "I was expecting someone bigger." Jake stood straight and met the commander's gaze. "Size isn't everything, sir." Crix made a sound that might have been laughter. "We shall see. In this facility, actions speak louder than words. You will be tested like everyone else. Do not expect special treatment because your species is new to the Coalition." "I wouldn't want any special treatment, sir," Jake replied. The commander studied him for a moment longer, then walked away. Jake noticed that several other aliens had stopped their training to watch the exchange. He could feel their eyes on him as they whispered to each other. "Don't mind him," Amy said quietly. "Crix is tough on everyone. He's actually a good teacher, but he believes in learning through experience." Over the next few days, Jake began his training. He was paired with different alien partners for various exercises. The Vorthik tested his strength. Jake held his own, but was clearly outmatched by their natural power. The Zephyrians challenged his speed. He was fast for a human, but slow compared to their lightning-quick movements. The Nexari tested his endurance. Here Jake did better, surprising them with how long he could maintain his energy. During hand-to-hand combat training, Jake sparred with a young Vorthik named Seth. The alien was confident and aggressive, using his claws and strength to press. The attack. Jake defended himself well, using footwork and timing to avoid the worst of Seth's strikes. He landed a few good hits of his own, but nothing that seemed to bother the tough-scaled warrior. "Not bad for a soft-skin," Seth said after their match. "You're tougher than you look." Jake thanked him, but he noticed the other aliens watching with expressions that seemed to say, "Is that all?" He was performing adequately, but he wasn't standing out. Most of the other species seemed to think humans were just average fighters, not weak, but not particularly strong either. That evening, Jake sat in the mess hall eating dinner. The food was designed to be safe for all species, but it tasted bland to him. Amy joined him at his table. "How are you feeling about the training so far?" she asked. Jake shrugged. "It's good. I'm learning a lot about how different species fight." Amy looked around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "Jake, I know you're holding back. I've seen your service record. You're not just regular infantry." Jake's expression didn't change. "I'm doing what I was told to do. Learn about alien fighting techniques and represent humanity well. But you're not showing them what humans are really capable of," Amy said. Jake took a sip of water. "Maybe that's for the best. These aliens seem to think we're harmless. Sometimes it's better to be underestimated." Amy nodded slowly. She understood what he meant, but she also knew that the real test was still coming. The Coalition had sent their best fighters to this program, and eventually someone would push Jake to show his true abilities. As Jake finished his meal, he looked around at the various alien species. They were all impressive in their own ways, stronger, faster, or tougher than humans. But Jake had learned something important during his years in the military. The most dangerous opponent wasn't always the one who looked the most dangerous. He would continue to train, learn, and observe. When the time came to show what a human could really do, he would be ready. Until then, he was content to let them think humans were just another average species in the galaxy. The training program continued, and Jake Morrison waited for his moment to arrive. The alarm sounded through the Aurora dawn at 08:00 hours. Jake was in the middle of his morning workout when red lights began flashing in the gym. All training stopped immediately. Aliens looked around nervously, talking in quick, worried voices. "Commander." Crix's voice came over the speakers. "All personnel report to the main hangar. We have a special arrival." Jake followed the crowd of trainees through the corridors. Amy caught up with him, her face serious. "Do you know what this is about?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "Emergency arrivals are rare. It must be important." They reached the hangar just as a sleek black ship docked with the station. The ship was unlike anything Jake had seen before. It looked like it was built for war, with sharp edges and dark metal that seemed to absorb light. No windows were visible, and weapon systems lined its hull. The hangar fell silent as the ship's door opened. A ramp extended, and steam hissed from the opening. Then a figure stepped out, and Jake heard several aliens gasp in fear. The creature was massive, standing at least 8 feet tall. Its body was covered in dark brown scales that looked like armor. Long arms ended in hands with claws that gleamed like metal. Its head was shaped like a wolf's, but larger, with teeth that showed even when its mouth was closed. Yellow eyes scanned the crowd with the look of a predator sizing up prey. "Rexorian," Amy whispered next to Jake. Her voice was barely audible. But Jake heard the fear in it. The creature walked down the ramp with fluid grace. Each step was silent despite its size. Its eyes moved constantly, taking in everything around it. When it looked at Jake, he felt like a deer being studied by it. Hungry Wolf. Commander Crix stepped forward, and Jake was surprised to see that even the tough Vorthic commander seemed nervous. "Welcome to the Aurora Dawn," Crix said. "I am Commander Crix. We were not expecting a Rexorian representative." The Rexorian's voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "I am Theshkar of the Rexorian Empire. The Coalition requested our participation in this training program. I am here to evaluate the quality of your warriors." Jake noticed how Theshkar said evaluate, like he was talking about judging meat at a market. The alien's eyes swept across the gathered trainees, and Jake saw contempt in that gaze. "These are the galaxy's finest fighters?" Theshkar asked. His tone made it clear he was not impressed. "I see soft creatures who have never known true combat." His eyes stopped on Jake. "And what is this pink soft skin? Why is such a weak creature permitted in a warrior's program?" Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his expression calm. He had dealt with bullies before, and this was just a bigger, more dangerous version of the same thing. "This is Sergeant Morrison," Commander Crix said. "He represents the human species in our exchange program." Theshkar made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like a growl. "Humans, yes, I have heard of your species. You contacted the Coalition with words of peace and friendship. You have no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. How did such weak creatures even survive to reach the stars?" Jake remained silent, but Amy stepped forward. "Humans have survived just fine, thank you." Theshkar looked at her with amusement. "Another soft skin speaks. Tell me, human female, has your species ever known true war? Have you ever fought for your very existence?" "We've had our share of conflicts," Amy replied carefully. "Conflicts," Theshkar repeated, as if the word tasted bad. "The Raxorians have waged war for 10,000 years. We have conquered 17 star systems. We have never lost a single battle. That is why the Coalition fears us, and why they invited us to this program." Commander Crix cleared his throat. "If you're ready, we can begin your orientation. The training schedule can be adjusted to accommodate your ... methods." Theshkar waved a clawed hand. "I do not need training. I am here to test these so-called warriors, but first I will observe. I want to see what passes for combat skill in this place." The next few days changed everything at the Aurora Dawn. Theshkar watched the training sessions, like a predator studying prey. He made comments about every fighter's technique, usually pointing out weaknesses and flaws. His presence made everyone nervous. When he finally joined a training session, the results were terrifying. Theshkar faced 3 Vorthic warriors at once. The fight lasted less than a minute. His movements were impossibly fast and precise. He used his claws like surgical instruments, striking nerve points and pressure spots that dropped his opponents instantly. None of them landed a single hit on him. "Pathetic," Theshkar said, as medical teams carried away the unconscious Vorthic. "Is this the best your species can offer?" The next day, he fought a group of Zephyrians. Despite their speed, they couldn't match his reflexes. He caught them one by one, using their own momentum against them. Again, the fight was over quickly. And again, his opponents needed medical attention. Word spread through the station quickly. Theshkar was unbeatable. His reputation grew with each victory. Trainees began to avoid him, taking different routes through the station to stay out of his way. "He's making everyone afraid," Amy said to Jake one evening. They were sitting in the mess hall, speaking quietly. Some of the trainees are asking to be transferred to other programs. Jake watched Theshkar across the room. The Raxorian sat alone, eating raw meat with his claws. Other aliens gave him a wide berth, creating an empty space around his table. What? Do you know about Raxorian culture? Jake asked. Amy thought for a moment. They're from a death world. Constant warfare, survival of the strongest. They've never been defeated in battle, never retreated, never surrendered. They're basically the galaxy's apex predators. And they think humans are weak, Jake said. Well, we did make first contact. With peaceful intentions. We sent diplomats, not warriors. From their perspective, we probably do look weak. Jake nodded. What would happen if someone beat him? Amy's eyes widened. Beat Theshkar? Jake, that's impossible. He's undefeated. His species has never lost a fight. But hypothetically, Jake pressed. What would happen? Amy looked around to make sure no one was listening. It would change everything. The Raxorians' entire reputation is built on being unbeatable. If someone defeated one of their warriors, it would shake the foundations of galactic politics. That night, Jake lay in his bunk thinking about what Amy had said. The Raxorians were bullies, but they were bullies. On a galactic scale, their entire culture was built on intimidation and fear. They kept other species in line because everyone believed they were unbeatable. But Jake had learned something important during his years in the military. Every bully had a weakness. No matter how tough they seemed, there was always a way to beat them. You just had to find it. Over the next few days, Jake watched Theshkar more carefully. He studied the alien's movements, his techniques, his patterns. He noticed small things that others missed. The way Theshkar relied on his reputation to intimidate opponents before fights even began. The way he expected his enemies to be afraid of him. The way he had never faced an opponent who wasn't impressed by his size and strength. Commander Crix made an announcement during morning formation. Due to recent events, sparring matches with our Raxorian guest will be voluntary only. Any trainee who wishes to spar with Theshkar may sign up for extra credit. However, medical support will be standing by, and participation is entirely optional. Jake looked around at the other trainees. Fear was written on every face. No one would volunteer for what seemed like certain defeat and injury. After the formation ended, Jake walked up to Commander Crix. Sir, I'd like to volunteer for a sparring match. Crix stared at him in shock. Morrison, did you not see what happened to the others? I saw, sir. I still want to volunteer. Theshkar, who had been standing nearby, turned at the sound of Jake's voice. A cruel smile spread across his wolf-like face. The pink soft skin wants to play warrior, Theshkar said. How amusing. Very well, little human. I will give you a lesson in what real combat means. Jake met the alien's gaze steadily. I'm looking forward to it. As word spread through the station, Jake knew he had set something in motion that would change everything. The question was whether he was ready for what came next. News of the upcoming match spread through the Aurora Dawn like wildfire. Within hours, everyone on the station knew that the human Jake Morrison had volunteered to fight Theshkar. The undefeated Raxorian warrior. Jake spent the morning in quiet preparation. He stretched his muscles, did light exercises, and reviewed fighting techniques in his mind. Amy found him in the gym, her face full of worry. Jake, you don't have to do this, she said. No one expects you to fight him. You can withdraw without anyone thinking less of you. Jake continued his push-ups, his breathing steady and controlled. I appreciate the concern, Amy, but I'm doing this. Why? She asked. What do you think you can accomplish? Jake finished his set and stood up. Someone needs to show these aliens that humans aren't as weak as they think. And someone needs to teach that bully a lesson. Amy shook her head. Jake, he's 8 feet tall, has claws like knives, and has never lost a fight. He's literally an apex predator from a death world. So am I, Jake said quietly. Amy blinked. What do you mean? Jake looked at her seriously. Earth is a death world too, Amy. We just don't advertise it. Meanwhile, betting pools had formed throughout the station. The odds were heavily against Jake, with most aliens betting on how long he would last rather than whether he could win. The Zephyrians, with their mathematical minds, calculated that Jake had a 0.003% chance of victory. The Vorthik were betting on whether he would last 10 seconds or 20. Even the peaceful Nexari were quietly discussing the match. Commander Crix was not happy about the situation. He called Jake to his office that afternoon. Morrison, I must advise you to reconsider, Crix said. Feshkar has defeated every opponent he has faced. Some of them were warriors with decades of experience. I understand the risks, sir, Jake replied. Do you? 3 Vorthik warriors are still in the medical bay. 2 Zephyrians suffered broken bones. The Nexari who fought him had his crystal structure cracked. What makes you think you can succeed? Where they failed, Jake met the commander's gaze. With respect, sir, I'm not them. Crix studied the human for a long moment. There is something about you, Morrison. You are not like the other humans I have met. Very well. The match will take place tomorrow at 1400 hours in the main arena. Medical teams will be standing by. That evening, Jake ate a light meal and went to bed early. He slept peacefully, something that surprised the other trainees who had seen him. They expected him to be nervous or afraid, but Jake seemed calm and relaxed. The next day, the main arena was packed. It seemed like everyone on the station had come to watch. Aliens filled the seats, talking excitedly about the upcoming match. The arena floor was covered with soft mats, and medical equipment stood ready at the edges. Jake entered the arena wearing simple training clothes. He moved with easy confidence, doing basic warm-up exercises. The aliens in the crowd watched him, with expressions ranging from pity to curiosity. He looked so small and ordinary compared to the warriors they were used to seeing. Then Feshkar entered. The crowd fell silent as the massive Raxorian walked onto the arena floor. He was even more intimidating in the bright lights of the arena. His scales seemed to shimmer with their own dark light, and his claws caught the reflections like polished metal. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step perfectly balanced and controlled. Feshkar looked around at the crowd, clearly enjoying the attention. He flexed his claws and rolled his shoulders, making sure everyone could see his physical advantages. Then he looked at Jake with what could only be described as amusement. Are you ready to learn what real combat means, soft skin? Feshkar asked. Jake nodded calmly. I'm ready when you are. Commander Crix stood between them, serving as the referee. This is a training match. Victory is achieved by knockout, submission, or when I call a halt. Are both fighters ready? Ready, Jake said. Ready, Feshkar growled. Begin. Feshkar immediately went on the attack, just as Jake had expected. The Raxorian was used to intimidating his opponents with aggressive opening moves. He lunged forward. With frightening speed, his claws extended toward Jake's chest. Jake stepped aside at the last second, letting Feshkar's momentum carry him past. It looked like a lucky dodge to the crowd, and they murmured in surprise that Jake had avoided the first strike. Feshkar spun around quickly, his yellow eyes narrowing. He attacked again, this time with a series of claw strikes aimed at Jake's head and torso. Jake weaved between them, his movements looking desperate and barely controlled. Run all you want, soft skin, Feshkar snarled. You cannot avoid me forever. The crowd watched as Jake seemed to barely escape each attack. He was clearly outmatched, they thought. It was only a matter of time before Theshkar's superior speed and strength would overwhelm him. But Jake was not running randomly. He was studying his opponent's patterns, learning the rhythm of his attacks. Every dodge gave him more information about how Theshkar moved, how he thought, how he fought. At the 7-second mark, Jake made his move. Theshkar lunged forward with another claw strike, expecting Jake to dodge backward again. Instead, Jake stepped forward and to the side, moving inside the alien's guard. His right hand shot out in a precise strike to Theshkar's wrist, hitting a nerve cluster that made the Rexorian's hand go numb. Theshkar's eyes widened in surprise, but Jake was already moving. His left elbow came up in a short, sharp strike to the alien's solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. As Theshkar doubled over, Jake's knee came up to meet his descending chin. The crowd gasped as the mighty Rexorian staggered backward. Blood trickled from his mouth, and his eyes showed confusion and pain. He had never been hit so hard or so precisely. "Impossible," Theshkar growled, but his voice was weaker now. Jake pressed his advantage. He moved forward with a series of strikes that seemed to come from nowhere. A knife hand to the throat that made Theshkar gag, an elbow to the ribs that cracked bone, a palm strike to the chest that knocked the alien backward. Theshkar tried to fight back, but his movements were slow and clumsy now. Jake had targeted specific nerve points and pressure spots, disrupting the alien's coordination and balance. The Rexorian's natural advantages meant nothing if he couldn't use them properly. Jake's final move was almost casual. As Theshkar swung wildly with his left claw, Jake ducked under the strike and delivered a precise uppercut to the alien's jaw. The punch connected with perfect timing and placement, and Theshkar's eyes rolled back in his head. The mighty Rexorian warrior collapsed to the mat like a falling tree. The arena fell into absolute silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. They all stared at the impossible scene before them, the undefeated apex predator lying unconscious on the mat, while the small human stood calmly beside him. Commander Crix looked at the timer in disbelief. 12 seconds, he announced in a voice filled with shock. Not the silence stretched on. Then, slowly, the implications of what they had just witnessed began to sink in. The crowd erupted in noise, gasps, shouts, conversations in a dozen different languages. Some aliens stood up to get a better look. Others sat frozen in their seats. Jake walked over to where Amy was sitting in the front row. "Could you ask the medical team to check on him?" he said calmly. "I made sure not to cause any permanent damage, but he'll probably have a headache when he wakes up." Amy stared at him with her mouth open. "Jake, what just happened?" Jake shrugged. "I won a sparring match. You defeated a Rexorian warrior in 12 seconds. Actually, it was more like 8 seconds, Jake corrected. The first 4 seconds were just me figuring out his pattern." Around them, the arena buzzed with excitement and confusion. Medical teams rushed onto the mat to check on Theshkar. Commander Crix stood over the unconscious alien, shaking his head in disbelief. Jake looked around at the crowd of staring aliens. "I guess I should go file a report or something." As he walked toward the exit, conversations exploded throughout the arena. The galaxy's understanding of humanity had just changed forever, and nobody knew what would happen next. The 12-second education was complete. The medical bay was in chaos. 3 Nixari doctors worked frantically over Theshkar's unconscious form, while a crowd of aliens pressed against the windows, trying to get a look at the defeated Rexorian. The alien predator lay still on the medical table, his breathing steady, but his eyes closed. "His vital signs are stable," announced Dr. Vex, the chief medical officer, "but I'm detecting unusual nerve disruption patterns throughout his body. It's like someone shut down his nervous system at specific points." Commander Crix stood at the foot of the medical table, his yellow eyes fixed on Jake. "Morrison, I need an explanation. Now." Jake stood calmly in the corner of the room, his arms crossed. "I used standard hand-to-hand combat techniques, sir. Nothing more." "Standard?" Crix's voice rose. "You defeated the galaxy's most dangerous predator in 12 seconds, and you call that standard?" Before Jake could answer, Amy pushed through. The crowd of onlookers. Her face was flushed with excitement and worry. "Commander, I need to speak with you privately. About Jake's background." Crix looked between Jake and Amy, his expression growing more suspicious. "Very well, my office. Now, both of you." They left the medical bay under the stares of dozens of aliens. Word of the match had spread through the station like lightning. Jake could hear conversations in multiple languages as they walked through the corridors. He caught fragments of translation. Impossible. The human. 12 seconds. In Commander Crix's office, Amy took a deep breath before speaking. "Commander, there are some things about humanity that weren't included in our first contact protocols." "Such as?" Crix demanded. Amy looked at Jake, who nodded slightly. "Jake isn't just a regular soldier. He's former Special Forces, elite combat specialist. What you saw today wasn't exceptional by human military standards. It was basic training." "Commander." Crix sat down heavily in his chair. "Explain." "Earth is what we call a death world," Amy continued. "High gravity, dangerous weather, predators everywhere. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We didn't develop claws or fangs or natural armor. Instead, we developed something else." "Which is?" Crix asked. "Intelligence, adaptability, the ability to think our way out of any situation." Amy gestured toward Jake. "Human soldiers are trained to fight opponents who are bigger, stronger, and faster than they are. We study weaknesses. We use psychology. We turn our enemies' strengths against them." Jake finally spoke up. "Sir, with respect, Theshkar fought exactly like I expected him to. He relied on intimidation, used his natural advantages, and assumed his opponent would be afraid of him. He never considered that someone might not be impressed by his size or reputation." Commander Crix stared at Jake for a long moment. "You're telling me that what I just witnessed was normal for your species? For trained soldiers, yes, sir. The techniques I used are taught to every human special forces operator. Pressure points, nerve strikes, psychological warfare. It's all standard curriculum." "Psychological warfare?" Crix repeated. Amy nodded. "The first rule of human military doctrine is that the battle is won before the fighting begins. If you can get inside your enemy's head, make them doubt themselves, you've already won. And Theshkar never had a chance." Jake added. He was so confident in his physical superiority that he never considered he might lose. That overconfidence made him predictable. Commander Crix was quiet for several minutes, processing this information. Finally, he spoke. "How many humans have this level of training?" "Special forces? Maybe 50,000 active personnel," Amy replied. "But basic combat training is mandatory for all human military personnel. That's about 200 million people." The commander's scale seemed to pale. 200 million? "Yes, sir. And that's just the military. Human civilians learn self-defense, martial arts, boxing, wrestling. Fighting is part of our culture." Jake added, "Sir, I wasn't even trying to hurt Theshkar. I used non-lethal techniques, specifically to avoid permanent damage." If this had been a real combat situation, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Commander Crix understood the implication. "Does the Coalition know about this?" Crix asked. Amy shook her head. "Earth's government decided to make first contact with diplomats and scientists. They thought it would be better to appear peaceful and non-threatening. "And now?" Crix asked. "Now the secret is out," Jake said simply. A chime sounded, and Crix's communication device activated. "Commander, we have a situation in the main corridor. Multiple species are demanding to speak with you about the human." Crix sighed. "Send them to conference room, and I'll be there in a moment." He looked at Jake and Amy. "Both of you will join me. It's time to face the consequences of your 12-second education." Conference room A was packed with representatives from every species on the station. Vorthic warriors stood next to Zephyrian scientists, while Nexari elders glowed with nervous energy. The room buzzed with conversations in multiple languages. Commander Crix entered with Jake and Amy behind him. The room fell silent immediately. "I'm sure you all have questions," Crix began. "I'll try to answer them as best I can." A Vorthic warrior named Gorth stood up. "Is it true that the human defeated Theshkar in single combat?" "Yes," Crix replied. "How is that possible?" asked a Zephyrian scientist. "Our calculations showed that Raxorians are superior to humans in every physical category." Amy stepped forward. "Physical superiority doesn't always determine the outcome of a fight. Sometimes intelligence and training matter more than strength or speed. Are all humans capable of such combat performance?" asked a Nexari elder. Jake spoke up. "Many of us are trained for combat, yes. But what you saw today was just one fighting style. Humans have developed dozens of different martial arts and combat systems over thousands of years." "How many human warriors exist?" demanded another Vorthic. "That's classified information," Amy replied carefully. "But I can tell you that humanity takes the defense of our world very seriously." The questions continued for hours. How long had humans been fighting? What weapons did they use? Had they ever fought other species? Were they planning to invade Coalition space? Amy and Jake answered as diplomatically as possible, but they could see the impact their words were having. The aliens were beginning to realize that their understanding of humanity was completely wrong. Finally, Commander Crix called for order. "I think we've heard enough for today. I suggest we all take time to process this information before making any decisions." As the aliens filed out of the room, Jake could hear them talking in urgent whispers. Some sounded afraid. Others sounded excited. All of them sounded confused. "What happens now?" Amy asked. Commander Crix looked tired. "Now we wait. Word of this will spread throughout Coalition space within days. Every species will want to know more about human combat capabilities. Some will want to form alliances. Others will see you as a threat." "And Theshkar?" Jake asked. "He'll recover. But his reputation and his species' reputation will never be the same. You didn't just defeat a Raxorian warrior, Morrison. You shattered the myth of Raxorian invincibility." Jake nodded. "Sometimes myths need to be broken." "Indeed," Crix agreed. "The question now is what will rise to replace them." As they left the conference room, Jake noticed that the other aliens on the station were looking at him differently. The fear and dismissal were gone, replaced by wariness and respect. Some nodded to him as he passed. Others moved out of his way. The galaxy's understanding of humanity had changed forever. Jake Morrison, a simple soldier from Earth, had accomplished in 12 seconds what diplomats and politicians had failed to do in months of negotiations. He had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. They would have to live with the consequences. Within 3 days, news of Jake's victory had spread across Coalition space. Ships arrived at the Aurora Dawn carrying reporters, military officials, and diplomats from dozens of worlds. The quiet training station had become the center of galactic attention. Jake found himself at the middle of a political storm he never wanted. Representatives from the Zephyrian Science Council wanted to study human combat techniques. Vorthic military leaders demanded detailed explanations of Earth's warrior training. Even the peaceful Nexari sent observers to learn about human fighting methods. "This is getting out of hand," Amy said as they watched another ship dock through the observation window. "Half the galaxy wants to form military alliances with Earth, and the other half thinks we're planning to invade everyone." Jake sipped his coffee and watched the chaos outside. What does Earth Command say about all this? They're sending a full diplomatic team. Admiral Hayes should arrive tomorrow with a fleet escort. Amy paused. "They're not happy that our secret is out, but they admit it was bound to happen eventually." "And Feshkar?" Amy pointed across the mess hall. The Raxorian warrior sat alone at a corner table. His head hung low. He had woken up 2 days ago, but hadn't spoken to anyone since. Other aliens avoided him, not out of fear, but out of embarrassment. The mighty predator had become a symbol of failure. "He's taking it hard," Amy said. His entire worldview was built on Raxorian superiority, having that shattered in 12 seconds ... It's like his whole identity is gone. Jake stood up. "Maybe it's time someone talked to him." Amy grabbed his arm. "Jake, I don't think that's a good idea. He might try to challenge you to another fight. Or he might be ready to learn something new," Jake replied. Jake walked across the mess hall, aware that every alien in the room was watching him. He sat down across from Feshkar without being invited. The Raxorian looked up with tired yellow eyes. "Come to gloat over your victory, soft skin?" Feshkar asked. His voice lacked its usual growl of authority. "No," Jake said simply. "I came to talk." Feshkar studied him for a moment. "What is there to discuss?" "You defeated me. My people's reputation is destroyed. I am a failure." "You're not a failure," Jake said. "You just learned that there's more than one way to fight. My entire life, I was taught that strength determines victory. The strong rule, the weak serve. It is the way of the Raxorian." Jake leaned forward. "That works when you're the strongest. But there's always someone stronger, faster, or more dangerous. What matters is not how strong you are, but how smart you fight." Feshkar's claws scraped against the table. "Easy words from the victor. You want to know the truth?" Jake asked. "In a fair fight, you would probably beat me. You're faster, stronger, and have natural weapons I don't have." "But I didn't fight fair." The Raxorian's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "I studied you for days before our match. I watched how you moved, how you attacked, how you thought. I knew exactly what you would do before you did it. By the time we stepped into that arena, I had already won." "Deception," Feshkar growled. "Strategy," Jake corrected. "The first rule of human warfare. Know your enemy better than he knows himself." Feshkar was quiet for several minutes. Finally, he spoke. "Teach me." Jake blinked. "What?" "Teach me these human fighting methods. I want to understand how you defeated me so easily." Jake looked around the mess hall. Every alien was still watching them, waiting to see what would happen. "Are you sure? Your people might not approve." "My people already think I am a disgrace. I have nothing left to lose." Feshkar met Jake's eyes. "But perhaps I have something to gain." Commander Crix's voice came over the intercom. "All personnel report to the main hangar. Admiral Hayes from Earth Command has arrived." Jake stood up. "We'll talk more later. But yes, I'll teach you. On one condition." "Which is?" "You help me teach the others." Humans have a saying. The best way to learn something is to teach it to someone else. The hangar was even more crowded than when Feshkar had arrived. Admiral Susan Hayes walked down the ramp of her ship with the confidence of someone used to command. She was followed by a team of diplomats, scientists, and military advisors. Commander Crix stepped forward to greet her. "Admiral Hayes, welcome to the Aurora Dawn." Commander Crix, thank you for hosting our educational demonstration. Admiral Hayes looked around at the crowd of aliens. I understand there's been quite a bit of interest in human capabilities. That's putting it mildly, Crix replied. Half the coalition wants to hire human military advisors. The other half wants to know if Earth is planning to conquer the galaxy. Admiral Hayes smiled. Earth has no interest in conquest, Commander. But we are interested in contributing to galactic peace and security. A Vorthic general pushed forward. Admiral, my government wishes to negotiate a military alliance. We want human trainers for our warrior caste. The Zephyrian Science Council requests access to human combat research, added a scientist. The Nexari Council seeks defensive training protocols, said a crystal being. Admiral Hayes held up her hand for silence. Gentlemen, ladies, honored beings, Earth appreciates your interest. But we believe the best way to share our knowledge is through expanded training programs like this one. She gestured toward Jake, who had been standing quietly in the crowd. Sergeant Morrison has demonstrated that humans have something valuable to contribute to coalition defense. We propose establishing joint training facilities where human instructors can teach willing students from all species. Commander Crix nodded slowly. A multi-species combat academy. It's an interesting idea. More than interesting, it's necessary, Admiral Hayes said. The galaxy is full of threats that no single species can handle alone. But together, combining the best of each species' abilities with human tactical thinking, we could create the most effective fighting force in galactic history. Over the following weeks, plans took shape for the new academy. Earth would provide instructors and training methods. Other species would contribute their unique abilities and perspectives. The Aurora Dawn would be expanded to accommodate the larger program. Jake found himself appointed as the first director of human combat instruction, a job he never wanted but couldn't refuse. His first class included students from every major coalition species, including Theshkar. Today we're going to learn about situational awareness, Jake told his mixed class of aliens. Fighting isn't just about strength or speed. It's about understanding your environment, your opponent, and yourself. He paired students from different species together. Vorthic learned from Zephyrian speed, while Zephyrians learned from Vorthic strength. Nexari taught patience while learning aggression. Even former enemies worked together, united by the common goal of becoming better fighters. Theshkar proved to be an excellent student and assistant instructor. His failure against Jake had humbled him, but it had also opened his mind to new possibilities. He began teaching other Raxorians that honor came not from being undefeated, but from continuously improving. The human way is different, Theshkar explained to a group of young Raxorian warriors via video link. They do not fight to prove their strength, they fight to win. There is wisdom in this approach. The new training program was a success beyond anyone's expectations. Students learned not just combat techniques, but cooperation and understanding between species. Former enemies became allies. Suspicious rivals became trusted partners. Amy, now promoted to colonel and serving as Jake's deputy, watched one of the training sessions from the observation deck. You know what you've done, don't you? She asked. Jake was coaching a Vorthic student through a defensive technique. Taught some aliens how to fight better? You've changed the galaxy, Amy said. 6 months ago, these species barely trusted each other. Now they're training together, learning from each other, becoming friends. Jake looked around at the training floor. A Zephyrian was helping a wounded Nexari to his feet after a sparring match. A group of Vorthic warriors were discussing tactics with their human instructor. Theshkar was patiently teaching a young alien how to control his aggression. Maybe that was the real lesson, Jake said. Not how to fight, but how to work together. That evening, Jake received a message from Earth Command. The success of the Aurora Dawn program had convinced the coalition to establish similar academies throughout their territory. Humans would serve as advisors and instructors, helping to train the next generation of galactic defenders. Congratulations, Director Morrison, the message read. You've accomplished something that diplomats and politicians couldn't do in decades of negotiations. You've shown the galaxy that humanity has something valuable to offer. Jake smiled as he deleted the message. He had never wanted to be a symbol or a hero. He had just wanted to do his job and maybe teach a bully a lesson. But sometimes, he realized, the smallest actions had the biggest consequences. As he walked through the corridors of the Aurora Dawn, aliens nodded to him with respect. Not the fearful respect they had once shown Theshkar, but the genuine respect earned through teaching and friendship. The 12-second fight had ended quickly, but its effects would last for generations. Jake Morrison, a simple soldier from Earth, had changed the galaxy forever. And he had done it not through conquest or intimidation, but by showing others that there was always more to learn. The lesson was complete, but the teaching would never.